So, getting into geometry now, okay? The first chapter is points, lines, and planes, okay? And the first section we're going to talk about today, it's really all just vocab. It's about how we name points, lines, and planes. Points, lines, and planes. There's no really math to it, okay? A lot of vocab terms here. I'll leave it up to you to decide what you think you need to write down and not, okay? So we're going to identify points, lines, and planes and understand what collinear and coplanar means, okay? So in this section, we talk about undefined terms. Undefined terms are things that can only be explained using examples and descriptions. Like in the dictionary, those are all defined terms, right? You look through the dictionary, it gives you a definition. Undefined terms are things you can only use, explain using examples. Like a point, which we say is a location. You know what a point looks like, right? It's just a dot, but a point can't be measured. There's not sizes of points. There's not huge points, little points, okay? A point is just a location. It exists, but you can't measure a point. Okay, that's one of the undefined terms. The undefined terms are points, lines, and planes. Okay, they're things that we define using examples. We don't define using necessarily a long definition like you would find in a dictionary. Okay, so an undefined term is explained only using examples. A point is a location. It can be a location on a line. It can be a location on a plane. We're going to talk about what those things are in just a second. Okay. The other vocab in this section, what a line is. We all think we know what a line looks like. A line's made up of points. It has no thickness or width. So, like if you're on Microsoft Word, and you make thick lines, short lines, or whatever. When we talk about geometry, all the lines are the same. The width doesn't matter. We don't measure the width. Okay. Also, lines never end. There's no end to lines. They go infinitely in both directions. Now, there's some pieces of line we're going to talk about in a second, but you can't measure a line. It goes on forever. Okay. It goes on forever. Collinear. What's co mean? Like a co-op. What's that part of that word co mean?
Two.
Two, and what's the other definition too? Yes, that is same, shared, that sort of thing. Co, right? So collinear means things that are shared lines. They share the same line. If points are on the same line, we call those collinear points. If they're on the same line. Okay? Collinear, they're on the same line. Plane is a flat surface that has points, has no depth, though like a swimming pool has depth, right? A plane is flat, has no depth, and extends infinitely in all directions. So like the floor is the example of a plane. However, it does not extend infinitely in all directions, right? It stops at the door, it stops at the wall. A ceiling is a plane, but it stops at the walls, okay? A plane extends infinitely in all directions. Coplanar, same thing, share a plane. Points that are on the same plane mean they're coplanar. Okay? Space, when we talk about geometry, we talk about it being in a space. Okay? The planes have to exist somewhere. Lines have to exist somewhere. A boundless three-dimensional space, right? We're not just dealing in 2D, it's 3D. Okay? Set of all points contains lines and planes. That's just where it exists. Okay? And locus, we're not going to talk much about locus in here. Okay, a locus is just a set of points that satisfy a condition. It's a group of points. Okay, we're not going to hit locus very hard, but it's just a set of points. This is essentially chapter 1 right here. We're going to talk about examples of what these look like, but it's these vocab terms. Okay, I know in chapter 1 test, the very first part of it is like 10 vocab questions. I give you word banks in geometry for vocab test, so I give you these words, and I ask you what is made up of points and has no thickness and width and extends infinitely in all directions. A line. Okay. So this is essentially what this first section of geometry is. Just a lot of vocab. Questions so far? Okay, this is in your book, but it's an example of what these things look like. A point, how we represent a point is we draw it by just a dot, right? That's all what we all think of. Okay, a point. We also write points with capital letters. That's point P. P is represented by a capital letter. Okay, it has no size or shape. There's not different sizes of points. A point's a point. It's just a location. Okay, and we just call it point P. There's no shorthand for it. Point P. With a line, we can name lines different ways. Okay? Well, first of all, we draw a line. We always draw two arrows on the end. Why do you think we do that? Yeah, exactly, because it goes each direction infinitely. You always draw arrows on the end of it. Okay? You name it with two of the points. For example, it's either line, like this. Let me change here. Line AB. That's one way you can do it. Or, line BA. If you really think the line deserves to be called line BA, you can call it BA. Okay. Line AB. Or, instead of writing the word line every time, which could get lengthy, if you write AB with a little line over it. This is also correct notation for a line, okay, with this little arrow line over it. That shows us that is a line, because later we're going to talk about line segments, we're going to talk about rays. That's a notation for a line. You always name it with 2 points. Sometimes a line has a little lowercase letter beside it. You can also use that little lowercase letter. You can call it line N. Okay? Only if it's a little lowercase letter is it talking about a line. Most of the time we name lines with 2 points, AB or BA. Okay? And then in a plane, most of the time we draw just a flat figure that's slanted like that. We name planes with 3 points, and we just write the word plane in front of it. There's no notation for that. Plane XYZ, YXZ, ZXY. The order doesn't matter. Planes are named with 3 points, lines are named with 2 points. Okay? If sometimes it has a capital cursive letter, you can name it with that. You can also name it plane T. Okay? So you can either name it with 3 points or the capital letter. That's how we name those things. That's how we shorthand them. So when we name them, here's a figure. Use this figure to name a line that contains point K. Okay? I want to name that line that has point K on it. What's one way I could do that? There's a lot of them. What's one way I could name this line? Yeah, Wyatt? Say it again.
Line A.
Line A, because that's the little lowercase letter. I can use that. What's another way I could name this line, Trevor?
JKL.
JK. I could name it line JK or line JL. I could have also said KJ, LJ. I could also say KL. These are all talking about the same line, right? All of those lines, it's the same one. It has point K on it. Okay? Questions about that? Those are examples we can name that. Of course, there's all the different combinations. If I want to name a plane that contains point L, a plane that has point L in it, lots of different ways I could do that. Who could give me one way to name this plane? Trevor?
Plane B.
Plane B, because that's the capital cursive letter. You could do that. What's another one? Remember, lines are named with 2 points. Planes are named with 3. Okay? So you can pick, right, JKL would be fine. What's another one? Yeah, you could use MJL. You could use any combination of those. As long as the points are in that plane, that's how you name it. Okay? Seems pretty straightforward, hopefully. I know the first section is just naming this stuff. Okay? You got to know how to name it. Here, name a line containing the point X. Well, we just talked about that. XQ, QY, XY, YX, any of those, or line C are all named line. But just remember, when you talk about a line, if you use XQ, you either need to put the word line in front of it or you need to put that double-sided arrow on the top of it. Okay? Name a plane. We just talked about that also. We could name it plane P, or we could pick 3 points that are in this drawing. We could call it plane QYZ if we wanted to. Okay? Or any combination of those 4 points. Rocket science, right? Okay? Good. Now, how these things are modeled in real life. Name the geometric shape modeled by a water glass on a table. So a table, what type of figure would a table probably represent? A point, line, or plane?
Plane.
Probably a plane, flat surface, and a water glass on it. Would that be like a point on a plane, or would it be like a line on a plane? Be like a point on a plane, right? Okay, that's one way you can think of it. Okay. A color dot on a map used to mark the location. Well, a color dot, those are points, right? When you're driving somewhere, you see the little point. The point is for the on the map. Modeled by the ceiling of your classroom, most likely a plane, right? Okay. Geometric shape modeled by the railing on a stairway. Okay. It's a line. It doesn't go forever, and it says line segment. We're going to talk about in a second just what a line segment is. It's just a piece of a line that you can measure, but we'll give the definition of that in just a second. All right. So the last part of this section is drawing these figures. It gives you a bunch of directions. How do you draw these? Okay. Now this gives a ton of directions. Draw R contains line AB, line DE, which intersect at P, and a point C, yada yada. all these directions. Let's take it one step at a time. Okay. First it says, draw plane R. Well, that's given to us right here. This is plane R. And then draw line AB and DE that intersect. What does intersect mean? They cross. That's where they touch, right? So just somewhere, I'm going to draw a line AB. And I'm going to make sure another line crosses, and that one is called DE. Doesn't matter where the points are. Just remember, since it's a line, it has two arrows that go on forever. Okay. They intersect at point P, so where they cross, I'm going to call that P. And add point C on that plane so it's not collinear. Collinear means it shares the same line. I don't want it on this line, so if I just write it out here, there's point C, it's not collinear. There's the figure it described. Okay? That's the last part of this section, is drawing these figures, given a description. Okay. There's another example of what it could look like. You could also be asked to do it on a coordinate plane. We're not going to go through that. But if you draw Q at -2, 4, so remember the x-coordinate always comes first, -2, 4. R at 4, 4. Add T so it's collinear. Collinear means it's on the same line. T is on the same line there. Doesn't matter where T is. If it's on that line, it's collinear. Okay. Read through this one a second. I want you to, in your head, think of which diagram explains this picture. I'll give you a minute or two to do that. Anybody think they got it? Anybody think they got it? Everybody want to volunteer to give their answer? Thomas, what do you got? Yeah, it's the top right, right? Now, one of them, it's pretty tricky. First of all, it says plane D. They're all plane D. Contains line A, M, and T. Okay? Now, this one looks pretty close. It intersects at point Z. Why is this one not the correct answer? Yeah, why? Because A isn't in the plane. It crosses the plane. It cuts the plane. It doesn't lie in the plane. It's not coplanar, right? Coplanar means it lies in the plane. That's the reason this one doesn't work and this one does, because all of these lines are in the plane. It's in that flat surface. Okay. Again, one on the coordinate plane. We're going to skip these. Okay. Drawing these figures. Okay. Point M is on the plane and is collinear. You can put point M anywhere on here and that would work. Okay. Pretty straightforward. Last thing we'll do here before lunch. In this figure, how many planes are there? Well, we have that plane S, this one. But we've also created another plane. This one right here. Okay? In this figure, there are actually two planes. Two flat surfaces. Plane S and plane ABC. Okay? So don't be fooled if you see something like that. Questions with that? Okay, when we come back, we will do a construction. I will give you a compass, show you how to use it, paper and pencil. Okay? And again, bell rings. Once about that bell rings, there's no bell to come back in. It's 5 minutes after that bell. A lot of you had second lunch last year, I know, so it's the same thing. Okay? When the bell rings, you can head to lunch, and I will see you in just a few minutes. Name 3 points that are collinear here. Okay? In this case, there are only 3. Who would like to give me those 3? Yep, John. Yep, D, B, and A. Those are the 3 collinear points because they are on the same line. Okay? Is it easier to see with the lights off? Yeah. Okay. Pretty simple one here. At what point do line DB and CA intersect? Those 2 lines intersect at point A, right? Okay, they intersect at point A. How many planes are there in this figure? There are 2. There is plane T, the one in blue, and then the plane formed by these intersecting lines. Okay. 3 points that are collinear here. There are lots of them. Could somebody give me one? Yep, Thomas. A what? A B are collinear, yes. Other collinear points? Jeff? A, X, and Z, yes. Other ones? X, O, and R, yes. And B, R, N. Those are our collinear. Very good. So we have those down. Are X, O, and R coplanar? Are those 3 points coplanar?
XO.
X, O, and R. Yes, they are, because they all lie in plane T. Okay. At what points do lines BN and XO intersect? BN and XO, those two lines intersect at what point? At point R, right? XO is this line here. They intersect at point R. Okay? So, the first part of your homework is extra credit. Okay? And those of you that had me last year know how much extra credit I gave, which was 0. Okay? So, this is kind of different. I want to try this. We're going to call it a geometry selfie. Okay? You don't have to actually put yourself in the picture. But for a couple extra credit points on the homework, I'll explain why. If you can out somewhere at your house, outside, somewhere else, take a picture of some example of either a point, line, or plane, or all three of them, you can do one of two things. You can either bring it into class and we'll show it to people if you want. We don't have to. Or you can email it to me at my email address, and then you can tell me if you want me to show it to people or not also. Okay? The reason I say, I called it a selfie here, but it doesn't have to be. You have to have some identification that I know you did it, so you didn't Google image something and say, hey, Mr. Knoll, here's a plane, you know. Okay? So, yes, question.
Can I send it to you on Snapchat?
No, you cannot Snapchat it to me. So that's the end of the first chapter, or the first section.